All right, I'll go ahead and start it off. Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylee, and I serve as the marketing manager here at Complete Coachworks. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar series where we aim to provide insights and solutions for the challenges that operations are facing today. In today's session, we will feature Patrick Scully, our Chief Commercial Officer at CCW, and we're also pleased to have Mike Schmieder from Everett Transit as our special guest speaker. Paula Red, our Sales Support Manager, will also be assisting with the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to Pat to kick off our discussion on revitalizing transit, the role of refurbishment.
Great. Thank you, Kaylee, and welcome everyone. I think for those that have joined before, this is a continuing education series that we started last year. We've had various webinars in last fall, additional blog posts and video series that will continue to focus on transportation solutions for the transit industry that we at CCW and affiliated companies specialize in, and obviously focusing on what we do and our expertise and specialization. But also today we're honored to have Mike Schmieder from Everett Transit in Washington to showcase their project that we're underway with them right now. So that's I think you'll hear it from an actual user as well as on our side the supplier to Everett. For myself, for those that I may not have met, I've been with CCW now almost a year. I've certainly known the company for over 30 years, and obviously their expertise in the business, providing a really key component in the bus supply chain process to recycle buses, take existing buses that have run their useful life, but also refurbish and put them back into service for customers like Everett. I've been in the transit industry for all of my career, starting primarily with bus sales, but also in engine component sales, and then spend a fair bit of time with bus OEMs as head of sales for Ryan Daimler Bus, MCI, and now with CCW. So great to have everybody on board. Next slide, please. So a little bit about CCW. CCW is located in California, Riverside to be exact. We have approximately 350 employees and specialize in bus repair, midlife refurbishment, but also sales and leasing of pre-owned transit buses. And you can see from the picture our operations in Riverside at the top, the campus at CCW, and then our storage facility nearby that has over 1,000 pre-owned vehicles ready for deployment for our sister operations in Transit Sales International, which is the selling arm, and Shuttle Bus Leasing, which is the leasing arm. So when it comes to vehicle selection, we are obviously the nation's leader in the amount of inventory and type of vehicles that we have available, from OEM to vehicle length to propulsion, including hybrid electric buses, and soon, and actually we've, I think, got our first pre-owned electric buses in stock. So we've obviously keeping a keen eye on what's happening with that reselling market for electric buses. But that is what we do here at CCW, Transit Sales International, and Shuttle Bus Leasing. But primarily our mission is that we're experts in solving fleet needs and bridging the gap when it comes to fleet needs for the nation's transit operations. Next slide. So what is bus refurbishment? Basically, it's taking pre-owned buses, and it can be either transit agencies' equipment or our equipment, and we refurbish the vehicle depending on customers' budget and scope of work, which we'll get into in a moment. But basically, it is a fleet option for transit operators to fill gaps by extending the life of buses, filling needs, especially when it comes to zero emission plans that every agency has, and you'll hear that in a moment from Mike as what they're doing in Everett. But the criticality and benefits are that the pricing is at a fraction of the cost of new buses. Clearly, you're approximately a quarter to maybe half of the cost of a new bus, and delivery is in a 3 to 4 month time frame, depending on scope, versus 18 to 24 months for new. So you can see, as I said at the opening, we're a complementary service to the new bus supply chain by providing benefits both from a cost perspective and a delivery perspective by bridging the gap as you wait for often new bus deliveries or, as I said, the implementation of zero-emission bus strategies. And we'll see in a moment, basically what we're doing is taking a functional bus, and which is, let's call it the frame or skeleton, and replacing key wear components, whether it's powertrain or customer amenities like interior seating, obviously paint and so on, and providing further useful life for that piece of equipment through the refurbishment process. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the scope of work can really include a broad spectrum of components, and you can see in the pictures, we can take it right down to the frame and deliver a refurbished vehicle, as you see in the bottom picture, using either new or refurbished components. And the criticality here is obviously budget and also objective of what the fleet needs, customer fleet needs are. We can replace everything that you see here, engine, transmission, cooling, etc. But it all depends on what the mission is for the extended life, how long you want to keep the vehicle, but also your available budget and bridging the gap between what's needed from a maintenance perspective, but also from a customer amenity perspective. And obviously that balance goes in the discussions that we have with the customer, including, up to the development of scope of work and the development of the order. Pretty significantly, the powertrain is obviously the biggest driver of cost in a lot of these scenarios. And what we have is we also have various scopes of work available that we can provide to transit agencies to help them in the journey of establishing what needs to be in the scope of work. So as we work with you, we can provide those resources to you. So you have sort of a playlist or something to work with moving forward. Next slide. Process steps are pretty clear. You can see them on the left, pictures on the right. But basically, the most important item is the establishment of the scope of work and finalizing that scope of work, balancing the needs of component selection and budget allocation. Obviously, then the mission is to then select the type of vehicle, can select it from our inventory, or as you'll hear from others, we can use customers' buses as well. And obviously then we acquire parts, which usually that leads to the timing, parts acquisition, especially longer lead time items like engines and transmissions, seating, as an example, pretty much drive the schedule. Obviously from there, we then begin the bus teardown of whatever components need to come out, and inspection, and then obviously installation of the various components into the vehicle. One of the other critical steps is extra work identification. Often when you get into a project, there's other work that needs to be done once you start removing and installing new components. And that is step 5, which is obviously something that we do with our customers to make sure that there's, if there's extra work that needs to be done that we identify or that the customer sees, that's taken care of. Obviously, paint body to finish the work, and then QA checks, road test, and final inspection and customer delivery. I mean, quite frankly, it's not dissimilar to a new bus build. Obviously, we're taking a existing vehicle and refurbishing it but some of the steps are very similar to what a new bus procurement steps would be. Next slide. So to reiterate, the advantages are pretty clear, and I think you'll hear them firsthand from Mike in a moment. But first of all, the lower cost and the return on investment that that you have, you can spend depending on scope, but as I said earlier, a quarter to half the price of new buses. But you're also leveraging your capital by being able to deploy and acquire multiple buses, refurbished buses versus just a single new bus. You can get up to 4 or 5 refurbished buses for the price of one new bus, depending on powertrain that's selected. And obviously, that goes into the second point, leveraging funds for multiple pieces of equipment. Delivery, as I said, is in the matter of a few months versus 1 to 2 years. FTA funds can be used for midlife refurbishment, and using either customers' equipment or selecting from our inventory, you can maintain fleet commonality and consistency with your fleet. And obviously that helps with driver training, mechanics training, and so on. And as I continue to say, this effort bridges the gap especially when new buses are delayed. And quite frankly, from a cost-effective fleet strategy perspective, obviously a very optimized return on investment for transit agencies. Next slide. So if this fits into what you would like to do in your fleet, obviously the key considerations are budget. What funds are available, and that's where we can also help with our standard scopes of work to give you an idea what can be available from a scope perspective at what pricing. Then to select the vehicle, the model year of bus, the propulsion, etc. Develop the scope of work in conjunction with ourselves, and the component selection within that scope of work, the nice to do versus what's required. Very often, and I'm sure we all do this in our everyday lives, is trying to figure out how to best fit in the desired items within budget. And then consideration of the biggest drivers, which are often powertrain, and whether that's a new components or refurbished components. I think I mentioned earlier, we also offer a battery electric option for refurbishment, our ZEPS product, which also provides benefits on your zero emission path. And then the things that make a difference to customers and whether they see it, seating, interior, destination signs, paint and graphics, all those things that would benefit ridership. And obviously balancing those items with maintenance items that you need to keep the buses running and on time. So those are the things to keep in mind that we provide our expertise and assistance with, and that's our mission as we go down the journey of providing a scope of work and midlife bus overhaul for transit operations. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Mike from Everett Transit, and he'll take you through a case example from his perspective. We do have a project underway with them right now, and he'll give you some insight as to their decision process with the refurbishment and acquisition of pre-owned equipment. Over to you, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me this morning. It's great to be on with all of you. As mentioned, my name is Mike Schmieder. I am the Operations Manager at Everett Transit, and I have been here with Everett for a little over 16 years. Started as a fixed route operator and have held a few different roles over that time. For those that aren't quite exactly sure where Everett, Washington is, it is about 30 miles north of Seattle, and we are right on the I-5 corridor. I-5 runs right through the middle of our fine, fair city. Next slide, please. So back in 2016, Everett Transit engaged with the University of Texas to determine its fitness for pursuing a zero-emission fleet, specifically battery electric buses. And given our service area, our topography, climate, it was determined that ET would be a good fit for an all battery electric fleet. And so planning began to move us in that direction. In 2018, our fleet composition was stood at 32 diesel buses, and we had 10 diesel electric hybrid buses. So you get a sense of the size of our agency, not huge, a little bit more on the smaller side. Then fleet composition today, 17 diesel buses, 10 diesel electric hybrids, 19 battery electric buses, and that represents 2 different manufacturers. And then in 2025, we'll be taking delivery of 14 more battery electric buses. Next slide, please. As of this past March, we crossed the milestone of 1 million miles of service with battery electric buses. And that is the equivalent, for those of you that like to equate it to something, equivalent to 40 times around the Earth in a battery electric bus. So with that kind of experience, we've learned some important lessons, more than I have time to share today. But one of the most important being that a battery electric bus, in truth, is about 62% of a bus. And you say, well, how do you explain that? Well, we came to this number after comparing service availability and revenue service hours between our battery electric fleet and our diesel and diesel hybrid electric fleet over a 4-year period. The reasons for this include fueling turnaround. Our battery electric buses charge at 17% per hour, and that means that from a total 0% state of charge, it takes them about 6 hours to fully charge. And that full charge will net us, for the most part, a full 8-hour shift of service. And I'll comment more about that in just a moment. But you contrast that to a diesel or diesel electric hybrid, takes 15 minutes to fill up and can be available for anything that we throw at it in a service day. It can basically run for 24 hours if needed to. Downtime and return to service. Battery electric buses just tend to lean on the temperamental side and have been down more frequently and tend to stay down longer. Relatively new technology and systems just take longer to troubleshoot and get back online. Then there are the seasonal impacts on buses in terms of hours of service. The seasonal impacts are 100% real. With colder temperatures, fall and winter, the Pacific Northwest, we see it dramatically. Even though we're considered a temperate climate, there's a significant drop in the range for our battery electrics. And it's not unusual to have to swap those buses out or put them on shorter pieces of work if we get down in the mid-30s or drop lower, as we saw single digits this past winter. With the manufacturer that we're working with now, we still see there's a strong seasonal impact in range, but we have a greater range to work with and are finding it easier to manage that seasonal hit. Nonetheless, it is a limiting factor. And then there are OEM partner challenges, and let's just go ahead and briefly break that down. Next slide, please. Going into this relatively brave new world of BEBs, parts availability and turnaround time has been a real factor, and frankly, honestly, it's been a real headache. With our current manufacturing partner, it has improved, and we're grateful for that. When our first manufacturing partner initiated Chapter 11 proceedings, this had a significant impact, as you might imagine, on our service and support for those buses. Right now, that support is sporadic and anything but consistent. And then apart from the manufacturers, apart from the OEM, there's the charging infrastructure. We are currently right about 18 months behind schedule on seeing our charging infrastructure fully operational. This has been driven by a lot of external forces on the market, but it has meant that for our last delivery of 10 battery electric buses, we had 4 cabinet chargers, and we have been waiting for almost a year and a half for those inductive chargers to come online. In terms of our original partner, when they filed for Chapter 11, our support for chargers basically disappeared. We've had 3 chargers supporting the 9 buses that we procured from that partner. So all of that, you didn't sign up to listen to my woes and my headaches, but it sets us up for where we're at today and enter complete Coachworks. With the ongoing uncertainty of support and service from our original OEM, delays in charging infrastructure, we reached out to Complete Coachworks to explore options to ensure that we were positioned to keep our service commitments to our community. Our BEVs are on the front line. We can't afford to just park them in a corner and keep on doing business. So we needed some options in a bit of a hurry to ensure our situation didn't get any worse. And I have to tell you a personal anecdote just really quickly about my introduction to Complete Coachworks. Our team had traveled to Southern California for the pre-build conference with our first zero emission battery electric OEM. And at the time, my role with our agency was different. I went along on that trip in the capacity of a trainer and providing input from that vantage point. One of the prime objectives for me was to actually experience a battery electric bus, and for our team. I just have to say that we were disappointed. During our entire pre-build conference with that manufacturer, not one bus was made available for a test ride. But also on that same trip, we made a side visit. We planned out an entire day. We went over to look at Complete Coachworks facility. And when we arrived, they not only provided a great tour of their facility and explanation of their business and processes, but they had one of their ZEPs, their zero emission propulsion system buses, waiting for us at the door to pile into, and took us for a ride, and we were able to have that experience. So first impressions matter. That was a strong first impression for our team. So when we sat down with the team at CCW to discuss our current need, I was struck first off with how well they listened to us. James Carson in particular listened to our needs long and hard, and waited until he really understood those needs before making recommendations or steering us towards any particular solution. So we really appreciated that. We also appreciated the level of straight talk that we received. There was no pressure, there was no hype, just good, solid, honest information to help us make the best decisions possible. And then throughout this entire process, the communication with CCW has been excellent. We haven't had to chase people down, remind them, or ping them. The team has been on top of and transparent with us with every detail. And then it's been plain from the start that Complete Coachworks is not satisfied until we're satisfied, that they are 100% committed to our customer satisfaction. And then finally, experience. And this is such a crucial component in this industry. CCW has staying power and industry experience, but not only that, they're tradespeople, the individuals that are reconditioning these buses. There's virtually nothing that they haven't seen, and it gives us great confidence that what we've asked of them in terms of upfitting our buses, they know how to do it. There's been no promising one thing on the front end, only later in the process to have excuses of why that can't happen. There's been none of that. So what did we actually order? Let's take a look at that. On the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see one of our existing 2007 35-foot Gillig buses that we have in our fleet. We have several of these in the fleet, and we are keeping them going right now. So what the scope of work and what we purchased through CCW was 5 2008 35-foot Gilligs. There was significant upfitting. There are a number of actions and pieces replaced, checked, or refurbished that CCW already has on their list, and then they can take that list as far as you want them to take it. So ours upfitting included a 2-color exterior paint job to match our most recent builds, new decals and branding, new Euro-style passenger windows to match our buses, new exterior mirrors, new flooring in the entire coach, new shocks and airbags all the way around, new bike rack, a Sportswork Apex 2 bike rack for the wider tires, new fare box, passenger seat inserts have been replaced, ADA mobility device securements, and in the operators area, we replaced the steering wheel with brand new. These coaches that we selected had fixed brake and accelerator assemblies, so we're putting in, CCW is putting in adjustable accelerator and brake pedal assemblies, new driver's seat, new driver's safety barrier, full camera surveillance system. And so with these coaches, we were also able to see the original vehicle maintenance history and personally inspect the vehicles we were purchasing. So for our maintenance team, there was a high level of confidence in moving forward on that standpoint. So where do they fit in our fleet? Well, these are no backup buses. These coaches are going right into frontline duty, and that is where we expect them to be for the next several years. So what do reconditioned buses represent to Everett Transit? Well, first off, it's service assurance. Early on, I mentioned many of the challenges we've had faced in deploying a zero-emission fleet. And we weren't naive. We expected challenges, but sometimes you need to make course corrections to adjust to those challenges. You can't anticipate every single challenge you'll encounter. So for us, with the uncertainty of support and parts from our first OEM partner and the delays in charging infrastructure, these buses ensure that we will keep our service commitments to our community, and they give us greater resiliency in that regard. These buses represent an intelligent use of resources and represent great value. For roughly the cost of a single new BEB today, we are able to add all 5 of these significantly reconditioned coaches to our fleet. We believe that honors our commitment to financial sustainability, and it represents a wise use of taxpayer funds. And then finally, Everett Transit is still absolutely committed to environmental sustainability and building an environmentally responsible system that our city and our customers can get behind. And I call this a different shade of green because zero-emission battery electric buses are certainly one option for green transportation, and we still have that in our plans. But we believe that there's a compelling story to be told in taking buses that have already served a useful life in one context, and instead of using raw materials, Complete Coachworks takes those buses, reconditions them, breathes new life into them, and we put them back on the road for several more years of service at a fraction of the cost of new. Now, add to this that we hope to be running these buses on renewable diesel or R99, which is 100% sustainable and reduces tailpipe emissions by up to 75%. And that is what I mean by when I say a different shade of green. And that is for us and for our agency, we find that to be a very compelling and a very cool narrative. So that is our experience, and that's what I have to share with you today. And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, Mike. And you really drove home, all the points that I mentioned, but in a real life example. And certainly thanks to you for being available and bringing home and driving home those points. And, most of them are shown here, obviously from a cost-effective perspective, using our funds. And as Mike said, a different shade of green, which I really like that tagline. I think it's a home run. The delivery perspective, I think, Mike, you also mentioned you needed to do something reasonably quickly. Obviously, we can fit into that with delivery within a few months versus years, as I mentioned. And then, as you've had experience with your battery electric fleet, the vehicles that you're procuring from us will bridge the gap that you have in some of those operational needs that you have, as well as, waiting for some other deliveries you might have for new buses. And then, the key thing is adding new life to an existing vehicle. And again, your different shade of green and being responsible citizens with refurbishing buses and not utilizing new raw material. Okay, we'll give it just a few more moments and then we'll conclude. I hope you found the information helpful. As I said, this is a part of a continuing series showcasing obviously what we do, but also the solutions that we provide to the industry. And I think, sincere thank you to Mike and, his comments. They really drive home the points that we made, but obviously coming from an operator, it makes all the difference. So Mike, thank you for those great comments, and we look forward to assisting you in your fleet operations as we deliver the vehicles to you here in the next few weeks. With that said, I want to thank everybody for attending and look to see you on our next webinar. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Paula and Kaylee and Alma, to our team. And thanks to everybody who joined. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.